I'm Vicky Bidmead. I'm a social worker in Doncaster, and I've been part of the Rescript group from the very beginning.
I'm Sharon Ward. I'm also a social worker, and I'm again also based within Doncaster Borough Council, and I too am a member of the Rescript project group. We've actually attended this conference today, and we've actually produced a number of workshops to talk about Doncaster's kind of implementation, the work that we've undertook in readiness, A, for the Care Act, but also in relation to our personalisation process. In 2008, there was when we started along our personalisation journey, we undertook a review several years after that to look at the work that we'd undertaken and what needed to change about personalisation, the way that we were working. It was clear from that review that actually there were a number of issues that were wrong with our system, and so we went and set about making changes. At that time then, there was a lot of national guidance from government, and there was a lot of information from TLAP that was coming out about personalisation, making the processes leaner, enabling service users to have starter budgets at an earlier basis. And that was pivotal really for Doncaster in kind of reshaping the way that we thought about our process. So we developed a Rescript project group because we were going to rescript basically the process we were undertaking.
When we did that, we recognised it needed to be social workers, assessment officers, rehabilitation officers, and we also recognised that it needed to be workers from across the borough, across the different disciplines, and that's sensory, learning disabilities, mental health and older peoples.
So kind of in terms of that core group of Rescript project group, we set about looking at our processes, and we worked quite closely with service users and with advocacy agencies to look at look at the route that we wanted to go down. Having looked at trying to streamline our process, it's been very clear that actually what we had didn't really lend itself to the focus we were going towards. So we decided that we wanted to create our own bespoke assessment.
We did. We started with a blank piece of paper, and we developed a new assessment process. In doing that, we needed to reflect upon what we'd done previously, because we knew it was broken, and we knew that we needed to move away from that and start a new process. We looked towards other local authorities. We went to visit them, didn't we?
Yeah.
We had them visit us, and we agreed that we needed to start with a blank sheet. We recognised through doing that process that actually our paperwork was the longest in the local authorities, and time consuming, not only for the frontline workers going out, but also time consuming for the back office processes as well, which put more time onto that service user getting their budgets up front. What we did we moved away from a ticky box assessment to a conversation-led assessment, an outcome-focused assessment, which actually underpins the principles of a person-centred approach, which for me as a frontline worker, that's what it's all about. It's actually talking to that person, having that conversation with them in their living room, and actually getting a picture of what their life is all about, their needs, their wants, their life, their circle of friends, an holistic approach, which it should be.
I think one of the things in relation to that was that the information that we were getting from service users is that the process that we were undertaking, in actual fact, was, again, based on their deficits. It was looking at the negative side rather than the positive things that they could do and their attributes. And again, they found it a very long-winded process. It was bureaucratic. It took time in which the money was released for them to kind of like look at their needs and how they were going to meet that. So I think it was agreed from both parties that, you know, the assessment format that we got really was inappropriate, and we needed to move away from that. So we kind of created that assessment which kind of looked at the person's kind of story and then captured a day in their life, a week in their life, what's important and who is important.
And part of that group, what we were also able to do is challenge each other in a professional way. If we didn't agree with what somebody was saying, then we would say why we didn't agree. Talk to me about it. Tell me why you think that works for you. Tell me why that's going to work for that service user out there in the community. And we were able to challenge other respectfully, weren't we, and take on each other's views. And because we had so many different characters within that Rescript group, we were able to come up with a good tool, a good assessment process, which works.
I think once we'd kind of devised the assessment and we'd kind of got the body of how we wanted it to look, we then had to look at our resource allocation system. That was still very much based on ticky boxes, and it was still driven by that tick box information. That didn't lend itself to the assessment that we'd created. So we kind of thought, well, okay, how do we go about this? We're going to have to make changes. So actually that was probably the biggest and bravest step that we took, because we decided...
A massive cultural change.
Yeah, we decided to create our own bespoke RAS, and that's something I don't think that any other local authority, I'm quite proud to say that, you know, we've actually taken that on board, and I think what we've got now is actually... we think we've tested it as much as we can do, and we think it's robust, and we think it's going to be something that works really well both for service users and for practitioners.
I think it's important to say also that we got backing from us management behind us. They have let us take lead with this, and they've backed us all the way, haven't they? You know, they've recognised things are broken in Doncaster. They've recognised things need to change, and they've allowed us frontline workers to be able to go with that, taking on board service users' needs, eligible needs, in line with the Care Act.
Yeah. I think basically from the point of the RAS, one of the big things, the big drivers about the fact that we wanted it to be around professional judgment. So we actually kind of like came to the conclusion that it needed to be based on eligible unmet needs, which is kind of what FACTS looks at now, but it also needs to be based on a level of risk. And that was something that I think that our assessment processes and assessment tools don't really lend themselves to. So we actually managed to formulate the level of risk that was involved in the RAS, and that
took time to be able to do that. And again, because different characters in the group, we came up with a really good, robust way of identifying that person's needs through our RAS grid.
And I think the fact that, you know, it's based on professional judgment. It means that what we've got is actually transparent. And it means that actually when we're out there in somebody's front room, undertaking an assessment, and we're talking to them about their current circumstances and what life is like for them, in terms of coming to a conclusion about how we're going to release a budget to them in order to kind of look at their outcomes, it means that we can explain to them how we've together we've come to a conclusion about what their areas of unmet need are, what their risk is, and that itself drives the RAS. So we can be very clear and very open with service users and carers alike and say, this is how we've come to this conclusion. It's not based on ticky boxes and complicated algorithms. It's basically on our conversation, on your needs and your risk, and that's how we've come to this resource allocation.
And as a worker, I have confidence in it, and I'm able to explain that to the service user that I'm supporting and their family members. And as before, I couldn't explain that. I did fail in that area because I wasn't confident in saying, the computer says this is your amount, and I could never work it out. But now it's transparent, and I am able to sit there with that service user and explain why we've come to the outcome that we've come to.
And has today been a useful experience?
It has. It has. I mean, as we're here in Doncaster, you know, we are changing, and culturally that change it's not going to happen overnight. You know, it's going to take a while before that happens. But I hope that happens quicker than what I envisage it's going to do. But everybody's recognised that change is needed, and it's coming in line with the Care Act. And when we go live in April, we're ready.
Yes,
aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's been something that we've kind of, I suppose, didn't foresee initially when we started this journey sort of 2.5 years ago. You know, the Care Act even wasn't kind of like being mentioned. Certainly the guidance wasn't around at that point. So I think the journey that we've undertaken has enabled us to kind of produce a process and documentation and a way of working that is Care Act compliant. And so I think that puts us in a very, very strong position. And I think for us, that's why I think, you know, there's been a lot of interest around Doncaster's model, if you like, of working, because we have created something very unique, but something that is very much in tune with personalisation. And I think that's something, as an authority
the body of it,
and as a project group, I think that's something we're very, very proud of.
I think we've recognised as well that the rollout of our new assessment process and RAS, the workers are going to need support with that to implement it, and the training is there. We've put that in place now, and management have agreed that they'll need that ongoing support in order to, you know, get the best possible outcomes that they can for those service users that they're supporting.
Have you had just final question, what would be your single highlight from today's session?
I'm quite verbal, let's say, and it's refreshing to find out that there are other verbal people out there that have got a voice. And what people have voiced today is that they're looking towards us, aren't they? You know, they're looking towards Doncaster as not as trailblazers as such, but they're seeing that we've recognised that we need to make a change and that we've started it off. And what we were doing this before the Care Act came in, weren't we? We'd identified that we needed that change, that cultural change, and we've started it. We've recognised that we need to start it now.
And I think also it's about sharing that information. One of the things that we have gleaned from today is there are a lot of local authorities out there that aren't in as fortunate position as us. So we're in a position to kind of like share our knowledge and our experiences with them, but also once they've undertaken their process, they're going to feed back to us as well. And perhaps because they'll have systems and processes that perhaps they might create in a more kind of like a constructive, leaner process than we've managed to do. So it's about that sharing of information. I think that for me is also is pivotal in what we've kind of created. It's the sharing of that font of knowledge and information.
One of the questions that were asked earlier is why don't all local authorities use the same assessments and RAS systems? And it's true. Why don't we? Why, Sheffield, Rotherham, Doncaster, Barnsley, why have we all got different systems when we are a local authority? When we should be sharing, if it's going to work, then we should be all doing that. Because people move about. People move about in South Yorkshire, people move away, and people come to us. So we should be working off the same systems.
That's great, thank you very much. So, does that, what you've talked about, does that cover the Doncaster story as well, or is that a separate?
No, it kind of does, because we didn't quite get onto it. Because the only other thing that we talked about in Doncaster's story, well, we didn't quite get to do it, but is the fact that actually what we've undertaken is looking at outcome care and support plans, about the review process, and the fact that in line with the Care Act, carers are recognised in very much in their own right, and I guess we've done work around that as well. So I guess there's a little bit more in terms of outcome care and support plans, reviews. But we haven't necessarily touched on that in the workshops because we kind of ran out of time, or we ended up talking about more detail about the assessment and the RAS bit. But to be fair, that's the bit that most people have been most interested in, because it's that we've created that's more unique.
And it is unique to Doncaster, isn't it, our RAS?
Do you feel like you've covered what you wanted to?
Yeah, I think because we did different workshops, didn't we? But one of the crux, what we have to say, that our RAS is unique to Doncaster because of the 450 sampling cases that we did. So if any other local authority want to go away and use that, they have to do that same sampling exercise to identify the resources that are in their community, the cost of things in their community, and what care costs for that person. And that's what we've done specifically for Doncaster. And it were a time-consuming, lengthy process that we had to do, but which was scrutinised, but we needed to do that to be able to identify our RAS.
It sounds, as an outsider, that you're very passionate about it.
We are. All the Rescript team are passionate about it, because we have, I say this all the time, I live in Sheffield, but I work in Doncaster. I choose to work in Doncaster because they have got a vision. They've learnt by the mistakes, they know they've got it wrong, and they're moving forward, and it's going to be so much better, isn't it?
And I think that for us, that's one thing, because we've been allowed to be part of this process from the start through to now its implementation and the reviewing of it. We're still going to be involved in that. It means that actually, as a practitioner, it really feels like what we've said it matters, and we have significantly influenced how this is being presented. So when we
say it all the time, we've kept it real. We are the workers that sit in people's living room at the end of the day. We're the one that they have the conversations with. We need to pass that information on to the people who are doing the back office processes, but we keep it real.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much.
Cheers, thank you. Did you record that last bit as well? I suddenly thought we were getting all jiggly, and then I thought, I bet he's still filming. Because actually, that's the bit when you suddenly kind of go, and they're off, and then you go, blah, 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 don't you?